Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality in a way that is extremely empowering. Speaking of exploring powerful perspectives, I'm super excited to announce the release of my very first book, The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. If you're ready to alchemize the circumstances in your life so that your abundance expands to an entirely new level in 2021, head over to goldenkey.gift to download the audio or ebook as my gift to you by using the code POSITIVEHEAD. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we grow again. It is a magical Monday here in the studio as I record, and I was feeling a little like exploring the destiny of souls again. I've been doing that from time to time. Michael Newton's book, which is a new case studies of life between lives, where he basically, for those of you who haven't caught one of these episodes before, he's a doctor who was a counseling psychologist, master hypnotherapist, and he started, taking people through hypnotherapy sessions where they would all of a sudden drop into past lives. And so he was curious and kept exploring, and then, they would share what was happening in their past life. And then, a lot of times it would lead up to their death. And then he would be like, oh, okay, well, now what? And it would then go into, their transition to the other side and what they were seeing, doing, experiencing on the other side, and how, basically how things are structured there. And he took a very scientific approach of sort of documenting over 40 years all of the things that he was shown through, thousands of patients. And then Journey of Souls and this book, Destiny of Souls, are the ones where he sort of documented all of that. And it's very fascinating, the overlap and things that he found as he went through, and would see just a lot of overlap with different, people under hypnotherapy over, many, many decades. And he just kind of documented it all to give us a manual, so to speak, of how things work, what it's like, from the spirit side, trying, to contact loved ones after they've departed. And it's just such a fascinating account of, seeing things through the lens of the spirit on the other side interacting with our world, or how they view our world, or how they view their journey and what it entails across many lifetimes. So he definitely found reincarnation to be a thing. So yeah, very, very fascinating. So, and in these books, there's just different case studies where it's the doctor talking to someone under hypnosis, and he'll sort of like in between, share a little insight. And, I'm going to just pick up where I left off the last time, which was maybe a month ago or so. And it's a section in Destiny of Souls that's called Death, Grief, and Comfort. So it's all about how souls are trying to comfort those after they've departed, and some of the insights there. So I'm going to start with here a section. It starts transference through children, and it basically talks about how sometimes when a departed loved one has departed, they can find a way to communicate to people still in physical through children who are more receptive to their contact. So, I'm going to just start there, and I hope you guys enjoy these cases. I'm going to just read, a few of them until I feel like we've kind of hit a good stopping point. So this is page 31, Transference Through Children. When souls have difficulty reaching the mind of a troubled adult, they might resort to using children as conduits for their messages. Children are more receptive to spirits because they have not been conditioned to doubt or resist the supernatural. Frequently, the young person chosen as a conduit is a family member of the departed. This situation is helpful to the spirit who is trying to reach a surviving relative, especially in the same household. The next case is that of a man who died of a heart attack in his backyard at age 42. Case 7. And by the way, as the case starts, it'll go between the Dr. Newton, and the person under hypnosis. And so I will just kind of inflect my voice to help you kind of know when I'm going back and forth between each. Starting with the doctor asking a question, which oftentimes the questions being posed are by the doctor, of course. What do you do to comfort your wife at the moment of death? At first, I try to hug Irene with my energy, but I don't have the hang of it yet. I can relate to her sorrow, but nothing I'm doing is working. I'm worried because I don't want to leave without saying goodbye. Just relax now and move slowly forward. I want you to explain to me how you work through this dilemma. I soon realized that I ought to be able to console Irene a little by reaching her through Sarah, our 10-year-old. Why do you think Sarah might be receptive to you? My daughter and I have a special bond. She also has great sorrow over my passing, but much of this is mixed with fear over what happened to me so suddenly. Sarah doesn't comprehend it all yet. There are too many neighbors crowding around trying to sustain my wife. No one is paying much attention to Sarah, sitting alone in our bedroom. Do you look upon this as an opportunity? Yes, I do. In fact, Sarah senses I am still alive, and so she is more open to accepting my vibrations as I move into the bedroom. Good. What happens next between you and your daughter? I've got it. Sarah is holding a set of her mother's knitting needles. I send warmth through them into her hands, and she feels this right away. Then I use the needles as a springboard to reach her spine at the base of the neck and work around to her chin. Subject stops and begins laughing. What is making you happy? Sarah is giggling because I'm tickling her chin like I did before she went to sleep every night. Now what do you do? The crowd is breaking up and leaving because I have been taken out to the street and placed into an ambulance. Irene comes alone into the bedroom to get ready for a neighbor who will drive her to the hospital. She also wants to check on our daughter. Sarah looks up at my wife and says, Mommy, you don't have to leave. Daddy is here with me. I know because I can feel him tickling my chin. And then what does your wife do? Irene is tearful, but not crying it as hard as before because she doesn't want to scare Sarah. So she hugs our daughter. Irene does not want to indulge in what she believes to be Sarah's fantasy about your being with her. Not yet, but I'm ready for Irene now. As soon as my wife holds our daughter, I jump the gap between them, sending energy flowing over both. Irene feels me too, although not as much as Sarah. They sit down on the bed and hold on to each other with their eyes closed. For a while, all three of us are alone together. Do you feel you have accomplished what you set out to do on this day? Yes, it's enough. It's time for me to leave, and I pull back away from them and float out of the house. Then I'm high over the countryside and sucked up into the sky. Soon I move into bright light, where my guides come to meet me. So now it's moving on to, the doctor reflecting, or onto another case. Contact in familiar settings. It may seem from the last case that once the departing soul has reached out and touched those who care about them, they go off to the spirit world without bothering to be near us again. There are people who don't feel a soul's presence right after death, but will in the future. Survivors who have reached the acceptance stage in their grief process would find solace in knowing those they have loved are still watching over them. Yet, there are those who never pick up anything. Souls don't give up easily on us. Another way spirits touch people is through environmental settings associated with their memory. These contacts are effective to minds which may be closed to all other forms of spiritual communication. The following case illustrates this method. My subject, a woman called Nancy in her last life, died of a sudden stroke after 38 years of marriage to Charles. Her husband was stuck between the denial and anger stages of grief, and his emotions were so pent up that he could not accept help from their friends or seek outside professional counseling. As an engineer, his predominantly analytical mind rejected any spiritual approach to his loss as being unscientific. Nancy's soul had tried reaching her husband in several ways for months after the funeral. His stoic nature created such a wall around himself that Charles had not really cried since his wife's death. To overcome this obstacle, Nancy decided she could reach his inner mind through his sense of smell by connecting with an environmental setting familiar to both of them. The use of sense organs by souls complements communication with the subconscious mind. Nancy decided to use her garden, specifically a rose bush, to reach Charles. Case 8. Why do you think Charles is going to react to your presence through a garden? Because he knows I loved my garden. For him, my plants were a take it or leave it situation. He knew it gave me pleasure, but to Charles, gardening was just a lot of hard work. Frankly, he helped very little in our yard. He was too busy with his mechanical projects. He paid no attention then to your yard work? Not unless I drew his attention to something. I had a favorite white rose bush by our front door, and whenever I cut these flowers, I would wave them in front of his nose and tell Charles that if this sweet scent did not affect him, then he had no romance in his soul. We used to laugh about this a lot because Charles was actually a tender love, but outwardly you would never know it. To avoid the issue, he would tease me by saying gruffly, "These are white roses. I like red." So how did you implement a plan with roses to let Charles know you are still alive and with him? My rose bush died from lack of attention after my death. In fact, my whole yard was in bad shape because Charles was not functioning well at all. One weekend, he was walking around the garden in a daze and came near some roses belonging to our next-door neighbor. He caught the smell. This is what I was waiting for, and I moved quickly into his mind. He thought of me and looked at my dead rose bush. You created an image of your rose bush in his mind? No, he would have missed that in the beginning. Charles understands tools. I started out by getting him to picture a shovel in his mind and digging. Then we made the transition to my rose bush and the garden center town where it could be purchased. Charles pulled out his car keys. You got him to walk to the car and then drive over to this nursery? It took persistence, but yes, I did. Then what did you do? At the nursery, Charles wandered around for a bit until I was able to draw him to the roses. They were only red varieties, and that suited him. I was projecting a white color in his mind, so he asked a clerk why there were no white roses. He was told red was all they had left in stock. Charles overrode my thoughts and bought a big pot of red roses, telling the clerk to deliver them to our house because he didn't want to get his car dirty. What do override thoughts mean to you? People under stress get impatient and fall back on established thought patterns. To Charles, the standard rose is red. That's his mindset. Since the store didn't have white roses at the moment, my husband would not deal with it further. So in a sense, Charles was blocking the conflicting images between his conscious thoughts and what you were projecting in his unconscious mind. Yes, and also my husband is very mentally tired from my death. Wouldn't red roses suit your purpose just as well? No. It was then I switched my energy to Sabine, the woman I knew who ran the store. She was at my funeral and was aware I loved white roses. I don't think I know where this is going, Nancy. There were no white roses. Charles bought the red roses and then left for home. Wasn't this enough for you? Laughing at me. You men. The white rose is me. The next morning, Sabine personally drove to my husband and delivered a big pot of white roses. She told my husband that she got them from another nursery, and this is what I would have wanted. Then she left Charles standing bewildered in our driveway. He carried them over to the hole he had dug, where my old rose bush had been, and stopped. The roses were in his face. He smelled their fragrance. But what was more important, the wash of white was combined with the scent. My subject pauses tearfully as she recreates this moment. You are making all this very clear. Please go on. Charles was feeling my presence at last. I now spread my energy around his torso to include the roses in a symmetrical envelopment. I wanted him to smell the white roses and my essence filtering through the energy field together. Was this effective? Finally, he knelt down next to the hole, pressing the roses to his face. Charles broke down and sobbed for a long time while I held him. When it was over, he knew I was with him still. While the spirits of husbands might use cars or sporting equipment, I find that wives often utilize garden setting to reach their mates. Another client told me about his wife applying the planting of an oak tree to make her connection. Before this widower saw me, he wrote, "Even if what happened to me was not for my wife, does it matter? The main thing is that in some way I'm using the emotional energy generated by my feelings. She was with me to tap into my inner resources, which previously were not available. I am no longer in the abyss without a glimmer of light." In talking with people about such experiences, which some call mystical, it is important to consider the possibility of a spiritual source. If we can feed into a highly charged state of emotion during our grief, we can both heal and learn more about our inner selves. Spirits may prefer to communicate with us in the form of ideas. Here is a quote from a letter I received from a former client about his departed wife, Gwen. I believe our session together assisted in his discovery of the best ways to receive his wife's thoughts. I have learned we don't all have equal abilities as souls to communicate with each other. Sending and receiving messages is a skill that needs to be refined with practice. I finally recognized the imprint of Gwen's thoughts after getting nothing during my meditations. She was a literary person who used word thoughts rather than pictures to generate feelings in me. I had to learn to integrate word flashes from her in my own manner of speaking, which she knows, in order to decipher what she was telling me. I see more clearly now how I can touch Gwen with my mind. Okay, I got one more here. Case 9 I'm going to read, and it starts off as strangers as messengers. Derek was a man in his 60s who came to see me from Canada to evaluate his life and try and resolve his greatest sadness. When he was a young man, he lost his beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Julia. Her death was sudden, unexpected, and so devastating that he and his wife decided to have no more children. I placed Derek in deep hypnosis and took him to a scene following his last life where he appeared in front of his counsel. We then discovered that one of his major current life lessons was learning to cope with tragedy. Derek had been deficient in this area during his past 2 lives by falling apart and making life more difficult for family survivors who depended upon him. He's doing much better in his current life. What was especially interesting for me about this case was a single incident that happened to Derek some 20 years after Julia's death. Derek had recently lost his wife to cancer and was in mourning. One day, feeling very despondent, he walked to a nearby amusement park. After a while, he sat down on a bench near a carousel. Listening to the music, Derek watched the children happily going around in circles on colorful wooden animals. He saw from a distance one little girl who looked like Julia, and tears flooded his eyes. Just then, a young woman of about 20 appeared and asked if she could sit down next to him. It was a warm day. She was dressed in white muslin, holding a cold drink in her hand. Not sure what that is. White muslin? M-U-S-L-I-N. Derek nodded but said nothing while the woman enjoyed her drink and talked about growing up in England and coming to Canada because she was particularly attracted to Vancouver. She introduced herself as Heather, and Derek noticed a glow of sunlight around her that gave the young woman a shining, angelic quality. Time seemed to be suspended for Derek as the conversation turned to family and what Heather was going to do with her new life in Canada. Derek found himself talking to her as a father, and the more they conversed, the more he felt he knew her. Finally, Heather stood up and placed her hand tenderly on Derek's shoulder. She smiled at him and said, "I know you are worried about me. Please don't be. Please don't be. I'm all right, and it's going to be a wonderful life. We will see each other again someday. I know." Derek told me that as Heather walked away and gave him a final wave, he saw his daughter and felt at peace. During our session, Derek recognized that the reincarnated soul of Julia had come to him and provided the assurance he had not really lost her. When we suffer the absence of people we love, they may come to us in mysterious ways, often when our minds are detached in a shallow alpha state. Take these moments as messages from the other side and allow them to bring sustenance to you. Wow, that's pretty cool. He felt like it was the reincarnation of his daughter. Connecting. Wow. Really, really cool. All right. Well, I think that's a good stopping place for today. We'll pick this back up at some point, probably in the coming weeks. So I'll feel inspired to read a little bit again. Hope you guys enjoy these Destiny of Souls readings. I find them just very inspiring to get that glimpse of, how eternal it all actually is. We are literally floating in eternity right now, and we can't ever lose anyone or anything. It's literally just taking vacations from one another so that when we come back together, the appreciation can be there, right? Because if we were stuck together eternally all day, every day, or no day, no time, that would probably be pretty challenging, right? No matter how much you love another. So yeah, with that being said, I do have a song to leave you guys with. This is a great artist, Tahum, T-A-H-U-M, and this song is called Andara. Till next time, journey well. Love you so, so much. Also, before we cue up today's song, as a quick reminder, don't forget to download the Golden Key audio or ebook as my free gift to you at goldenkey.gift using the Golden Key code POSITIVEHEAD And please, if you enjoy my gift, leave a positive review on Amazon so others can unlock their lives with the help of the Golden Key as well.